G'day y'all, it's The Edward Show. I'm your host, Edward Fox, and together we're going to dive into the lives and stories of extraordinary individuals I meet from every corner of our globe. G'day viewers and listeners, it's Ed Fox with The Edward Show. You know, The Edward Show is all about meeting interesting people and then making fun of them. No, not really. It's about introducing them and having a good conversation. And today, my special guest is Joe Matz, business transformation gapologist. That's a mouthful, Joe. G'day, how you doing?
It sure is. I'm doing great. And Ed, I am glad to be here and glad to be on screen with you.
Awesome. Well, thanks. I've got to show off my new jacket. It's got my American flag on the inside. That's all you. So folks, to see that one, awesome. You got to view it on YouTube, Facebook, or LinkedIn. But if you listen to the podcast, Joe, great to have you on the show. I had the pleasure of being on your, what is it called? Espresso jam?
Espresso jams. Yes.
Yeah, it was great.
Yeah, we had a great time.
Yeah. You know when a door's not a door?
What a door is not a door.
Right. No. When it's a jar.
Yes.
Open. So
open.
So okay. The way my mind works is I just thought jam goes in a jar. So I could tell my dad joke about the door being a jar. See, that's an insight into my mind that you probably didn't need.
That's scary.
Yeah, I know, isn't it? And I've been married to the most wonderful wife in the world for 32 years. And here's a picture of her. You'll have to watch the video. So most wonderful wife in the world. And that's trademarked. And she puts up with the way that mind works. And it's been 32 years. So that's...
You're truly blessed.
Truly blessed. So Joe, where are you situated currently today?
I am currently in Raleigh, North Carolina.
I love Raleigh. You and I talked about the cricket field in Raleigh and the big Indian population that plays a lot of cricket in Raleigh.
That's right. It's kind of exciting that they're making that new cricket field. Yeah.
Right. Yeah. So that's a fun talk for me. But Joe, the thing I'm interested about you, tell us a little bit about who you are as a person and what you do as a business. And then I'd like to get into some of the things and the places you've lived around the world, if that's okay.
Yeah. Okay. Well, who I am as a person, you know, that's a tough question because I am a person, I am a human being. And who am I as a person? I am an honest businessman. I've had over 10 businesses on 3 continents. I love my wife. I love my dogs. I love my children and my family and some of my friends.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, you know, and I try to make a contribution to the world and I want to leave the world a better place. And that kind of sums things up. I am a bit of a nerd, but that's not a problem because the other half is geek. And so I'm a nerdy geek. I love Star Trek and Star Wars, and let's not get into that debate.
Oh, no, there is no debate. If it's science fiction, it's good. I miss Firefly. What about yourself? You're a Firefly fan?
I miss Firefly. That was such an awesome series.
Yep.
Yeah, you know, they're a little bit radical. They've got some moral, but they've got some morals.
Yep.
And yeah, that was.
And I love watching those actors that have gone on to other roles. You know, we're like, oh, she was in Firefly, like she was the companion, or you know, and then Nathan Fillion I watch in The Rookie all the time. Anyway, so we have not.
Now, I am very fortunate because my wife is the she is the IMDb expert. So. Okay. When we're watching a film or a movie, she's like, oh, you know them, that's so-and-so from such and such. And I said, well, I don't know, you know, that's great. So give me some background and tell me out who they were married to and what they've done before. And so I don't have to worry about any of that stuff.
Right. Yep.
Keeps me up to date on that.
I didn't know that about you. I didn't know that we were both sci-fi fans. That's great.
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah. Yeah. Awesome.
So your business, what, with the business you currently own, how do I say that?
So I pronounce it Apexable.
Apexable.
Okay. So it's spelled Apex-able.
Able. Yeah.
And the reason I named it that is because I had a very life-changing experience in climbing Mount Kilimanjaro.
Okay.
And I use a lot of mountain metaphors in my business. And business in general talks about climbing mountains and reaching your peak and the success at the summit and all of that. So I wanted something that encapsulated that leaning an orientation that I have.
Right. Did you hold a lion up at the top little lion cub when you got to the top of it? It doesn't matter. Doesn't matter. So when did you climb Mount Kilimanjaro?
This was in 2018.
Oh, wow. And what had that always been a passion or?
Well, here's how it happened. I was sitting at a bar with my dad.
Most stories start like that.
That's
Hold
right.
my beer.
It might be a good story. So I'm sitting at a bar, I'm a couple beers in. My dad is next to me and he says, "Hey, Joe, if I climb Kilimanjaro, will you come with me?" And I said, "Sure." Little did I know, a year later, I was going to be trekking up the mountain.
Wow.
So that started it. But Ed, we didn't even know if it was possible at that time. We didn't know anything about Mount Kilimanjaro. I didn't even know where it was located. It's in Tanzania.
Right.
And I had no idea. So we started, based on that inspiration, we started to do some research. And the question we wanted to answer was, could we really do this? We're not mountain climbers. My father is quite an active senior fellow. He'd probably hate me if he heard me say that. Yeah, he considers himself still to be middle-aged, and he is very active. But could he climb the mountain? Who's done it before? Who can help us get up there? And then it was training and buying equipment. What do we need? Do we have the equipment? Do we need coats, jackets? What kind of socks? And who's going to help us get up this mountain? And all of that and the training took a year.
Wow.
And then we were up on the mountain. But we went through accountability, because we would climb and hike and go out in the woods over the weekend, and we put up pictures in our private Facebook group of where we were, what we had done, how far we climbed it. Believe me, you did not want to arrive to Sunday evening and not have a picture of your weekend hike.
Right.
So there was that accountability factor, and we trained and we got stronger, and in the end we summited Mount Kilimanjaro.
And how do you relate that to your business a lot? I think I saw on your website there on your one sheet for the podcast on different topics that have come out of that experience.
Yeah. So from the inspiration, I mean, all business starts with an inspiration. And hopefully it starts with a problem that you're going to solve.
Right.
The problem was we were at sea level and we wanted to be at 19,000 feet. So we had to solve that problem. But then after the inspiration, we did some marketing research. How have people done this before? What can we learn from people who have done this before? How are we going to train? Are we going to get stronger? We're going to gain knowledge and then apply that knowledge. So your business goes through that also. Who's going to help us? We did research on outfitting companies. Who's going to help us get up that mountain? And we settled on a company that has been fantastic. And they had a guide. He'd been up the mountain over 100 times.
Wow.
And he's taken over 500 people up the mountain. So that was our guide, MC. We used to call him MC Hammer. And he was a fun guy. But he would take us up the mountain. He had guides. So there were 8 hikers, 8 of us. And we were not mountain climbers, but we made it up the mountain because we had 48 people going with us to help us. And they were bringing the food and the tents and the sleeping bags and carrying our extra clothes that were too heavy. And so it took 48 people to get the 8 of us up the mountain. That doesn't sound so good. It's like, why did you need so many people?
Well, it takes a team, right? Just like in building a business, it does take a team.
Right. And MC, he was not only the head guide, but he was also the leader. And sometimes as the leader, he was in the sweep. He was the back of the pack, making sure no one got hurt, or fell down or something, or needed help. And he had in front one of his trainees leading the group. So he was in charge, but he was training the people directly under him to one day be in charge.
Wow.
And that was a lesson for us also.
So what were you surprised? What was the biggest thing you struggled with actually climbing the mountain?
Well, I have to tell you, since you asked, I did not, some of the food I had did not sit well with me. I
Right.
had stomach issues that kind
Mhm.
of made me find rocks at certain areas
Right.
of the trail. Um, that was a struggle for me. What the I guess the biggest struggle was the mindset of being on the mountain.
Okay.
Because after 5 days of hiking every day and then going to sleep and being exhausted, waking up, what are we going to do today? I don't know. Why don't we walk a little while? So there are some funny things that happen on the mountain. Um, the first day, there was a guy, his name is Gideon. And Gideon was the fellow who carried 40 pounds of my gear. That was his job. I didn't know his job was also to make me comfortable. And so the first day he came and he said, "Oh, Joe, let me have your boots." He didn't speak much English. So it was like in sign language, "I'll take your boots." And I'm like, "No, it's okay." And he says, "No, I take your boots." So, okay, let him take my boots and he cleaned them and they come back, right? The next day, he takes my boots and he brought me breakfast in the tent. The next day, where's Gideon? He's not around. I'm like, I miss Gideon. Where's Gideon? So I had no idea that I would appreciate his services so much.
Right.
And that a bit of comfort when you're on a mountain far from home in a strange place and you know you're going to be hiking and exhausted the day, that little bit of comfort made a big difference for me.
Mm.
And funny thing, we had men, we had women with us, and we had the porta potties would bring up. And we had one guy to bring the porta potty, and that's how you get to 48 people, Ed. You
Right.
got one guy to bring the porta potty. Well, if he's bringing the porta potty and the tent that goes along with that, he can't bring his own food. He can't bring his tent or his sleeping bag. So he needs an assistant to bring actually it's not it's a level up because you start, that's the level where you start if you want to be on the team. So he had a guy bringing his sleeping bag and his food because he couldn't do that. So we had two porta potties. This was at insistence of some of our female companions. One was, and I didn't know until the fourth day that there was a woman's restroom and a men's restroom. I just went wherever was closest. And then I found out and I'm like, oh, really? I was supposed to be using that one for the last days. But
Here's what it is.
That's right. And on the mountain where there are no showers, you kind of let things go a little bit.
Right. Well, and I could imagine, you're sweating, you're working hard, you're getting up there. It sounds like an amazing adventure and just unfathomable for somebody like me, but
yeah, so
that decision.
Now, another lesson you mentioned and you made me think of. So going up the mountain, we saw other teams, other groups of people climbing the mountain, and it was like cities moving up the mountain, and we would move up the mountain. So it's 7 days up and 2 days down, basically. Right. On the way down, we passed what would be considered the Gurney graveyard. And they had these basically tables, single bed size with huge wheels on them. And you know what they're used for, right? Bringing people down the mountain who couldn't make it on their own.
Oh, wow.
And they didn't let us pass by that area until we were on our way down. And I'm sure that was on purpose.
Right.
Yeah.
Because I'm sure some people didn't prepare as much as what you and your dad prepared.
That's correct. Yeah. Not everyone makes it to the summit.
Okay.
Right. Now, we took the easiest route, and I feel no shame.
Right.
Because it's still Kilimanjaro. It's still a very tall mountain.
Out of 7.8 billion people, you're one of maybe several thousand or whatever it is that have made that trip.
Right. And I would take the easiest route again, and I would recommend everyone who is not a mountain climber to take that route. It's more enjoyable, and it's just makes the trip more fun. Now, it's still very difficult.
Right.
But it makes it more fun.
Did oxygen become a problem? Did you find it harder to breathe as you went up those levels?
There was a process of acclimation.
Okay.
And so as you go up, and we went very slow, we walked very slow so that we didn't get out of breath. But when we arrived at one camp very early in the day, because it was a short day, We then rested a little bit, but then we climbed another 300 feet up.
Right.
And we stayed at that level to kind of acclimate to that level, that altitude.
Right.
And when we came back down, we slept better that night than any other night because we had acclimated at a higher level. So that was very interesting. I remember telling a fellow this in a business context, and I said, so if you want to make 10 calls a day, make 20 calls a day for a week. And then when you make 10, you'll feel like you're on vacation.
Right. Yeah, that makes sense. And actually, I'll take that. I'm not very good at that cold calling aspect of business. I like networking and using BNI groups and other stuff to build those relationships. For picking up and doing cold calls, it's probably my weakest area in business. So that's some good advice there too. Just eat the frog, right? Who used to say that? Was that Brian Tracy or is that somebody
Eat that
else?
frog. Yeah, there's a book. Isn't there a book called Eat That Frog?
Yeah.
That's right.
Yeah.
Because if you eat a frog in the early hours of the day, you've already passed the worst of your day.
Right.
Nothing is going to be worse. You're going to have a day's going to get better from there.
Right. Yeah. The way I took that was, if you've got a problem client, or if you've got a problem that you've got to own up to that was maybe your mistake, own up to it early on and then get it out of the way. Because if you think about it all day, it's just going to get bigger and bigger and bigger, and you might as well just do it.
That's right.
Yeah.
Right. And how many times have we put something off that was uncomfortable or undesirable?
All the time.
Yeah. Just
all the
get
time.
it over with. Eat that frog.
That's a good point. So, but now that's not just that's probably the most interesting thing you've done, except that I know you've done other interesting things. So you have spent some time living in Italy, and I take it you didn't speak Italian when you got there.
Not when I got there. That's right. I had a month's notice. So I graduated college and I was working where I wanted to work and what I wanted to do, where I wanted to do it. And I got an offer to go to Italy.
Right.
In October. November 4th, I was in Italy.
Wow.
And I figured, if I don't go now, when will I go? I'm kind of unsettled. I just got out of college, and so I went. And it was a 2-year project. I stayed overseas for 18 years.
Wow.
And in those beginning years, it was very lonely. I didn't deal with many people who spoke English, so I didn't speak very much. It was very lonely, and I couldn't even go to the bar and cry my woes to the bartender,
right?
Because they only spoke Italian.
So what years was this that you were in Italy the first time?
The first time was 1985.
Okay.
And I stayed until 91.
I was in Italy in 85. Isn't that interesting?
Wow. Okay. Where were you?
I was up in Como, just south of the Swiss.
Beautiful.
It is.
Yeah.
So I went in there. I went into one of the little stores, and this guy had a cousin in Perth or Sydney or something. I don't remember. And so he's talking good English, actually, which wasn't easy to find in 1985. And I'm buying a couple of bananas, and he says, I'm 50 lira short. And I'm like, oh my God, well, I'll put one back. He says, no, next time. I didn't realize 50 lira was not much, but he said next time. I said, okay, next time. I've never been back. He's probably dead and buried by now. But that was, we went into Switzerland, and then we said, oh, let's go down into Italy so we can say we've done it. And we stayed overnight in a youth hostel in Como, Italy, and then back into Switzerland the next day.
Como, just south of the Alps and on the water, right?
Right. Yeah, it was beautiful. I mean, it was gorgeous. I would go back there in a heartbeat. Just has not happened since 1985. So it's just weird. It's just weird. The things that I'm finding that are similar. I had a coffee meeting today with a guy that I met on Alignable. Are you on Alignable, Joe?
I am. And after talking with you, I realized I need to beef up my profile.
Well, so I came up with an idea with a friend to help people with their social media profiles, because there's a lot of business owners out there whose social media profile doesn't reflect their business. But yeah, Alignable's been really strong with me. So anyway, so I meet with this guy for coffee in Nashville, and I start talking about how I've bought these socks that have like patterns embedded in the sock that helps with balance and memory retention. I don't believe any of that crap. Right. I told him, I said, I don't believe any of that crap. But this lady that told me to try them, I'm like, you know what? I've got to open myself up to more opportunities. You know, $45 for a pair of socks that will help me improve my balance and my cognitive function. What's the worst? I got an expensive pair of socks. I bought socks that cost me more than $40 before, merino wool socks that I love when I'm out working. The merino wool is great, especially if I'm walking through creeks and stuff back on the farm. We'd need that merino wool because it retains the heat even when it gets wet, right? So we start talking. He goes, that reminds me of a lady in Canada, Beth. I said, don't say it. Beth Poulin. He goes, do you know her? Like, we're sitting in Nashville, Tennessee, and we both know the same lady that sells these Vox socks that help with your brain and issues and stuff. That's Zoom amazing. Has opened up so much stuff. Yeah. Anyway, back to your story. Sorry, folks, back to the regularly scheduled program. Same bat time, same bat channel. So you're in Italy in 1985. You don't know a person. You don't know anybody. You're working over there. What sort of work were you doing, Joe?
So I was the fellow's eyes on the ground.
Okay.
He had lost his eyes on the ground. And that's why he came to me in October and said, hey, I need somebody to look after my interest in my business over there. And the guy who was going to do that backed out. He's gone. I need someone over there. And that's why a month later, I was over there. Eventually, I became the sales lead in Italy. And that occurred because they introduced vitamins. And I'd been taking vitamins since the age of 13. So I knew a little bit about vitamins. And I went around teaching the salespeople how to talk about and sell vitamins. And that got me in the position of being the sales lead. And I started training people. So I figured out what to do. I went over there. I didn't know what I was going to do. But you know, one thing I did, I avoided English speakers.
So you immersed yourself in the culture and in the language, just like we do as kids. We pick it up a lot faster that way.
Exactly. So I did that, and it was so interesting. I met so many great people, and I had to speak with a dictionary. I read magazines. I read bicycle magazines because I was interested in bicycles. So I read bicycle magazines, and what a magazine they call Topolino. And Topolino is Mickey Mouse in Italian. And I started talking like Mickey Mouse and Donald Duck, and I decided that's enough. That's enough of learning from Mickey Mouse how to speak Italian.
And so you spent time in Italy. What did you say? The first time was 5 years?
5 years, yep.
5 years. And then where'd you go from Italy?
Then I went to Sao Paulo, Brazil.
Oh, yeah. So I could see that translation straight from Italian to Spanish. Do they speak Portuguese?
They speak Portuguese, yes.
Yeah. So they speak Portuguese in Brazil. So how did that go?
Yeah, it was very fortunate because I understood 50% of what everyone was saying. So that's good and dangerous.
Right.
But I could understand 50% of what was being said. So I already had a leg up there.
Right.
And that went very nice. Yeah, Italy was fantastic. Brazil was fantastic.
Yeah, sorry, I skipped you from Brazil to Italy pretty quick. Do you have a favorite story about your first time in Italy that pops out? And if not, that's okay. We can move on to Brazil.
Yeah, so we're driving around Italy and we see all these road signs that say senza unico, senza unico. There's senza unico, and we think we're driving around in circles. Well, every street has the same name, senza unico. But what senza unico means is one way. So,
were you driving the right way in these one-way streets or the wrong way?
I'll plead the fifth. On that one.
So when I first came to America, I lived in Wichita, Kansas, and Wichita, Kansas has a one-way street, Main Street for part of it, up by the courthouse. And so I'm driving along, I think it was Central Avenue, and I turn right into Main Street, and there's 4 lanes of traffic all coming my way. And 3 of them are cop cars. We're right by the courthouse and that sort of stuff. And like I pull into the first driveway I can, and I'm waiting. I'm just waiting. And sure enough, one of the cops pulls over. He's like, "What do you think you're doing?"
Yeah.
I'm like, "Well, here's my Australian driver's license. I'm Australian. I turned into a one-way street, didn't see the one-way sign. He said, but you're on the wrong side of the road, even if you turned the corner. I said, yes, but being Australian, we drive on the other side of the road. So I turned the right direction for being in Australia, just the wrong direction for being here. And he's like, oh, that makes sense. He says, okay. I said, look, my heart is going at 100 miles an hour. Like it wasn't intentional. It was totally a mistake. He said, I get it. I get it. He says, just be more careful. I said, dude, I'm trying to read a map and learn my way around Wichita. I've been here like 3 days, so I was struggling. A couple of years later, we took a truck and drove down through Mexico, down to Chihuahua City. And we were driving around and we had the dictionary trying to translate Spanish and stuff. And the one I kept seeing was peligroso, peligroso, peligroso. And, some of you guys will know, or a lot of you will know, or most of you will know, it means like danger or dangerous or whatever. And it was talking about dangerous curves as we were going through the mountain. And I finally figured out, peligroso, it's like, that's about the only word I remember from being in that, because it was like, man, and my grandfather was with me. And there used to be a song, La Cucaracha, La Cucaracha. So we're sitting at this Mexican hotel. We sit in for breakfast and he's getting his ham and eggs and he's singing. He says, all I know about Mexico is La Cucaracha, La Cucaracha. And our friend was with us and I'm like, I don't know what that means. Like, you could be swearing at these guys. I don't know. And people are kind of looking at him, and the guy that was with us that was a fluent Spanish speaker, he's like, Bill, he says, you're singing about cockroaches in a restaurant. And my grandpa goes like bright red and just stops, like just goes head down, starts eating the chow, right? So yeah, so you just never know what you're going to say in that environment when you're speaking a different language. And it's the same with English. There's some words that Australians use in English that Americans don't use. And there's words that Americans use in a way that Australians would never think to use it and find it kind of embarrassing that the way those words, did you run into some of that as well?
I did run into that. Yeah, sure. I remember when I came back one time from Italy and, by that time I was thinking in Italian and I asked someone in English, I said, how many hours are there? Because I wanted to know what time it was. And that was a literal translation from Italian to English. And my mind had not gotten back on the English track yet.
Yeah, so we had a foreign exchange student from India. His name's Prabjit Singh Baga, and he lived with us in 2005. And, these Indian kids, they're not allowed in the kitchen. They're not allowed to do anything, right? Mom and grandma do everything for them. Even though they want to help, they want to participate, they're not allowed to. So he gets over here and he's like, when is the dinner? So that's that literal translation, when is the dinner? Well, the dinner is whenever you get off your butt and go fix it. Like, that's when the dinner is. But we would just say, when is dinner? Right. Or he would say, I'm going to take the shower. And we'd say, Prabjit, where are you going to take the shower? Right. And so we immersed him pretty quickly into, and he says, oh, I have to learn all these things about America. I said, well, you're kind of screwed because you got me, who's an Australian, still learning how to be an American. So you're going to have a bit of a bad trip here, dude, because I screw things up all the time. I say things like trunk, boot for trunk, and windscreen for windshield, and different words that we use. Like, I stood up in my networking group and I said, I want to be introduced to somebody who owns a car yard. And they go, what's a car yard? And I'm like, and one other guy goes, oh, it's like one of those places out in Western Kansas where the grass is growing up and they've got all the cars in the yard. I said, no, I thought that was in Oklahoma. Sorry, Oklahomans, I don't mean to offend, but he said, you mean a dealership? I said, no, used cars. He said, oh, that's a car lot. I said, oh, well, that makes sense. There's a lot of cars. He said, no.
That's not where it came from.
Right. And I said, well, but think about it. I said, out in Western Kansas, there's cattle yards where they have a lot of cattle in the yard and they sell the cattle.
Okay.
Right. I said, so a car yard is a lot of cars that they sell the cars. So
now you're making too much sense for a language where we park in the driveway and we drive on the parkway. Right. So yeah, those sort of things, like, just the different languages that we don't understand. I like when I have a lot of Indian and Pakistani friends that I play cricket with,
And so I tell them a dad joke and trying to get them to, why is that funny? Because it doesn't make any sense to them. So the two fish in a tank, one turns to the other and says, you man the guns, I'll drive.
Okay.
And all they can think about is a fish tank. So they don't understand about the guns and driving. Well, that's the whole point of the joke, right? Is because we think fish tank, but they're in an army tank. So, oh, we get it now, you know, or they say they do, whether they do or not.
Right. But, you know, one of the ways that you really know the language, you have to know the culture, because there are cultural references. But when you start to understand the jokes and you start to laugh at the jokes in your second language,
right,
then you're really at a point where you're getting to the point where you're really fluid in that language.
Right. Yeah, and that's a great point too. So you're in Italy for 5 years. Now you're going to Sao Paulo, Brazil, and the Portuguese and the Italian allows you to know some stuff, right? Like you said,
right.
about 50%. So why are you now in Brazil? Like, you're the world traveler, right? You graduate college. So how old are you when you go to Italy?
I'm 23 years old.
So you're 23-year-old, you stay till you're 28. Now you're in Brazil. Man, you just must be having the time of your life.
I am. That's right. So in Brazil, I'm running the show.
Okay.
The company wanted to expand to South America. They asked me if I would go to South America and do that. And I said, why not? Seems like the next logical thing to do. And so there I am running a company and trying to figure out how to operate in a foreign country. And that was exciting. That was really exciting. So I ended up running a company and having folks all over the country and traveling the entire country, basically speaking at events. So one time I was speaking to a group of salespeople, and someone said, hey, you're really good. Why don't you speak to other groups? In fact, I know a group you should talk with. So I got on the speaking circuit. And that was wonderful because I got paid to travel in Brazil and speak from a stage. So one time we're talking about the problems with languages, and I started to know enough that they would let me speak in Portuguese and not be translated.
Oh, wow.
So I'm giving a gift to someone. I was the MC at an event, and I'm giving a gift to someone that was personalized on the back. It was painted on the back. It was a wooden bowl kind of thing. And I said in Portuguese, I'm not going to say it in Portuguese here, but I said, yeah, and and look, it's even personalized and painted on the back. The crowd goes wild with laughter. And I can't figure out why. I said, I must have said it wrong. So to be sure, I repeated it. And they went wild again. And I looked at my friend in the audience and I said, later, you tell me what I said and what's going on here. Well, I ended up saying on the back of this bowl was a male organ. And I told them twice, just in case, they didn't understand. Yeah.
Right.
So it was hilarious, but I was given a lot of leeway because they know I didn't mean it. It was a good crowd.
So there's a recording of that somewhere out there, Joe.
I hope not.
We had the same. I used to be actually, I still am an Amway independent business owner, and Amway's the granddaddy of all the direct selling, along with Mary Kay and those guys. And we had an American speaker came over, and he's trying to rah us up, and go out there, and he says, go out there and knock them on their fannies, which in America means their bum, right? Their butt. But in Australia, it doesn't mean the butt. It means the front of a woman, not the back of a woman. And so everybody, the crowd goes deathly quiet. And he goes to dinner and they all clue him in. And he comes back and he's bright red just thinking about it. And he's like, can I just amend that last statement? Go out there and knock them on their bums. And everybody goes, yeah, But the same thing, we gave him leeway because he wasn't intentional, so.
Exactly.
Right. So, there's not a lot of girls named Fanny in Australia.
I bet.
Yeah. No. They're all named Sheila. When my wife went to Australia, before she was my wife, she's on this bus and this guy's like, I went out with this Sheila last night. And this guy says, I'm hanging out with that Sheila. And this girl says, you Sheilas want to get together? And she's like, she meets me and she says, is there a lot of girls named Sheila in Australia? Like, is Sheila a really popular name? I said, oh, it's generic. It's generic for all women. And some women see it as derogatory and some women don't see it as derogatory. It's like blokes and Sheilas. If you go to an Outback Steakhouse back in the day, in fact, I still find the odd one will say blokes and Sheilas on the restrooms, but some people don't know what that means. So they like go in the wrong one. So a lot of places put men and women underneath it. So yeah, so here we have English that has these challenges, right? I've got some friends from Spain that have a challenge with some of the Hispanic, Mexican. I don't know the right term there. If you're from Spain, you're Spanish. You're a Spaniard, right?
Okay.
If you're from Mexico, you're Hispanic. Somebody's going to educate me.
You're Mexican.
Put a comment. You're Mexican. Okay. So I don't know. Two white guys talking about that. It seems kind of wrong. But so my friend from Barcelona was saying that some of the things in Spanish don't translate between Mexican Spanish and Spanish Spanish.
That's correct. And it's like Australian English and American English.
Right. That was the point I was getting to. Thanks for clarifying that and keeping it clear. But we're not done with you yet. Like, you know, I try and keep these to 30 minutes. We're going to blow straight through and do an hour. Like, just screw it. Like, folks, if you want to stop listening, stop it now. Go to your other favorite podcast of mine, you know, or Matt's or Joe's or anybody else that we've done podcasts with, and listen to them and then come back and listen to part 2. Okay, so part 2, Joe is not done. Joe is not done. After
where are we going?
Brazil, where do you go after Brazil?
After Brazil, I go back to Italy.
Is this with the same company or a different company?
No, I left the company. I left the public speaking business that I had, and I kind of got a little bit bored, Ed, and I was saying the same thing over and over again. It wasn't new to me, but it was new to the audience, and I figured I was bored with it. I figured people know this stuff. You know, today I still find people teaching the stuff that I was teaching back then in Portuguese. But so I want to get out and do something different. And I say, I know, I'll go to work like in a physical place, in a physical location, see how that goes. So I got a job, and I was going to take over and be this guy's right-hand man. He was he was the owner, CEO, marketer, operations manager, all of that. And he needed a second. I was going to be his second. Well, 2 months in, he says, you know, the deal we spoke about, yeah, we're not going to do that. We're doing this other thing with you. And I said, no. He said, Joe, we're doing this other thing with you. So I put in my resignation, and I was gone that afternoon.
Okay.
I didn't like I couldn't trust him, and I didn't like the new deal either. So I said, what am I going to do? If I'm doing nothing, I might as well. Oh, I forgot. So in Brazil, I taught English.
Okay.
I ended up teaching English because a friend came to me and he said, Joe, I got this deal and I don't know how to do it. I think we can make a lot of money. I said, what do you mean we make a lot of money? So we put together an English course. See, this company was bought by an American company, and they told their employees, you will speak English in 6 months or you will be fired.
Oh, wow.
So we charged an enormous amount of money to get these folks to speak English, and speaking English in 6 months. So I said in Italy, well, maybe I'll try that. And I started hanging up 8.5 by 11 sheets of paper. If you want to learn English, call Joe. In not too long, I had 7 teachers working for me.
Oh, wow.
We were teaching in schools, private groups, companies, and private lessons.
So I'm going to stop you right there. I did realize we're recording this, and I realize I've got a 2 o'clock that I didn't think about. So in my time, you're on East Coast, right, Joe? Are you?
I'm on East Coast.
Yeah. Yep. Okay. So you're an hour later. So we are going to have to cut this a bit shorter than I wanted to. But you've got skill sets at working at major corporations and growing, continuing to grow the corporation, and you've got skill sets at starting businesses as well. So if somebody wants to get in touch with you and learn more about what you do, what's the best way for them to do that?
So they can connect with me on LinkedIn, and from there, the world opens up, right?
Okay.
And my name, it's at Joe Matz, that's Joematz, and LinkedIn. And, or you can go to my website, which is apex-able.com. And my podcasts are there. My information is there. Everything about what I do is there. Resources, free stuff, it's all there.
Okay, and we'll take Joe's bio. He's going to send me And then we will put it in the show notes as well. So you'll have all that information, and it will be posted on all of your major podcast platforms, on LinkedIn, on Facebook, on YouTube. That's enough, but it'll be posted on all those places. Okay, we have like 7 minutes. So continue your story on, you've got 7 teachers now. You got 7 minutes to finish up the story and give us the takeaway.
So the greatest thing about teaching English in Italy is that the Italians don't like to work around the Christmas time, about 2 weeks before, 2 weeks after. So I didn't work then. They also don't like to work in the summer. So by May, I had a part-time job. By June, I wasn't teaching in June, July, or August. So I had the summers free. What happens? I get with some buddies. We put together a mountain bike tourism company, and we bring tourists up to the mountains for day trips on mountain bikes.
Awesome. That sounds great. Now, did you come from an entrepreneurial background? Were your family entrepreneurs?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, going back to my great grandfathers, they've had their own businesses.
I kind of liked it, and I don't know if there's studies out here like this, but my grandmother was one of the top 10 Tupperware dealers in Australia. All my aunts and uncles owned their own businesses. My dad was a contractor that did his own thing. So I grew up around that, left school at 15 and started my first business. And I kind of would love to see a study, because I think it's tougher for people that didn't grow up. If you grew up, if you've ever read Rich Dad, Poor Dad by Robert Kiyosaki, right? His poor dad was an academic school teacher, I think it was, or whatever, and a superintendent maybe. And so he was always told, get a safe, secure job, right? And for me, I was told, like, hey, you do you, start a business, go to school, whatever you want to do, you do it. Did you have that same sort of?
Yeah, so I had always thought of having my own business because all of my ancestors have had their own business. And I think that study would reveal that that is the normal progression of things. I know folks who their parents and their grandparents always had a secure job, when they used to be secure.
Right.
But it was get a good job with a good company, they'll take care of you. And even today, these folks, even at the age of 20 or 30, they're like, yep, get in a job, get into corporate, stay in the corporate. It's safe. You got the health insurance. It's safe. It's all of that stuff.
Right. Yeah. I had open heart surgery a few years ago. And this guy, Indian guy, I want to talk about cricket. He says, I'm a heart surgeon. I don't have time for cricket, so I don't play cricket. I said, okay. And his dad was a heart surgeon. So I think there's that natural progression. A lot of us go into the field of maybe our parents or grandparents or whatever.
Most definitely.
So I find that there's a lot of people that, have you heard this term now that the pandemic has brought about this great resignation? They're calling it the great resignation, right? Where people have said, oh, you know what? Like, I think I'm going to do my own thing. I don't want to work for corporate anymore. I think there's a lot of people out there that need help from people like you so that they can reach the apex in their business, because maybe they've been a employee or even a high level, a C-suite employee, but they don't really know how to start a business from the ground up. They don't know all the pitfalls that they're going to go through. And I think that's what I enjoyed talking to you about when we did your podcast and just in general when we've talked. But you've got so many other facets that can feed them information that I think they'd be crazy not to reach out to you.
Yeah. So what I do now is I help people put together a signature program that is unique to them based on what I call their keys, which are their knowledge, experience, and expertise. Combine that with their passion and their orientation, where they want to be in 5, 10 years. We put together a signature program that is unique in the marketplace so that they can stand out from the crowd and get out of the commodities business, put together a step-by-step program so that they can help their clients get from point A to point B. And then we come up with a marketing program, and I need some help with that. I reach out to folks who are experts in marketing, and then we do that, and we get them running and owning a viable, profitable business that is theirs, that is uniquely theirs. And so it's real exciting. So I work with executives, I work with solopreneurs and micro businesses, from the startup to the point where they've been in business a while, but they're not getting the traction that they want to get. So we work on their messaging, we work on their unique program and their offer, and make sure that they can attract their ideal clients. That's
awesome, Joe. And I've loved chatting with you and talking with you. And, I'm definitely going to try and send referrals your way, but I think people are crazy if they don't reach out and at least have a introductory call with you. So, hey, thanks so much for being on the show. I know we're going to talk more offline, but man, it's been a blast. Thank you so much.
Yes, it's been a lot of fun, Ed. Thanks for having me on your show.
You're welcome. G'day again. Well, that's it for the show. Hope you enjoyed it. Be sure to like us, subscribe, follow, write a 5-star review, all the good stuff. Thanks a lot for listening, and look forward to having you listen to the next one.